what do I think about the Fermi paradox? That's an interesting question. If you don't know what the Fermi paradox is, the actual definition is, here, I'll find it here. The actual definition is, it's about aliens. The question is, here it is. Where is everybody? The idea is, if there is named after, I'll go to the Wikipedia. The Fermi paradox is named after Enrico Fermi. It's the apparent contradiction between the lack of evidence and the high probability estimates, those given by the Drake equation, for the existence of extraterrestrial civilizations. And the Drake equation is, it's an equation that's, here I'll go to the Wikipedia of that. It's used to arrive at an estimate of the number of active, communicative, extraterrestrial civilizations in the Milky Way galaxy. And the Fermi paradox is, if you look at all of the stars in our galaxy alone, billions of stars and billions of galaxies, hundreds of billions of stars, hundreds of billions of galaxies, many of them which are many, many, many years older than our galaxy, many years older than our planet. The question is, why haven't these aliens contacted us? Where is everybody? So that's the question, the Fermi paradox. I've thought about this a lot, so I'm actually happy about this question. I have a feeling that our ideas about what a society or what civilization does as it advances are based entirely on our idea that we are dependent upon the monkey body, that we're dependent upon the physical flesh and the idea of being somewhere in a measurable way, that's the only way you can experience something. I think that's an error on our part. I don't think that we are going to be attached to the physical body forever. This sounds like hippie nonsense, silly woo-woo bullshit, but this is my thought behind it. I think that, first of all, we are moving closer and closer every day to being integrated with technology. And by integrated with technology, I think initially it's going to happen where there's going to be some sort of a chip that we have in our body, whether it's something that we use that it helps us, it enhances our vision, or it enhances our mental function, or our ability to communicate with each other, or our ability to access information. It's entirely possible that it might start out as some sort of a helmet that we put on that lets us, like maybe like a ball cap with electrodes on it. And you put this thing on and it stimulates areas of your brain that allow you to see these images, and maybe perhaps like some sort of a screen like Minority Report, like it'll be in front of you where you'll be able to access data, where you'll be able to ask it questions. I mean, I have this Hey Siri function. We have this Hey Siri function on our phones that people get pissed off when I say those words on the podcast, because if you have an Android phone, you don't know this, but if you have an iPhone, you have that option on. If someone says those words, Hey Siri, your phone goes ba-ding, like you're asking it a question. So you say, Hey Siri, where's the fella get a blowjob around here? Or whatever, ask it some questions, and it'll actually answer you. You could say, Hey Siri, call Duncan. It'll call Duncan. Hey Siri, navigate to the Hollywood Bowl. It'll give you the directions to get to the Hollywood Bowl in real time. It's amazing. And it's science fiction. It's something that just a few years ago was completely outside of our imagination. We really didn't think that they were going to have something that sat on the table next to you, some small little sliver of glass and metal and whatever the fuck it's made out of. Electrodes? No, it's in there. Silicone? You could talk to that thing and say, Hey Siri, and it would, you could say, Hey Siri, what is the Fermi paradox? And it would Google it for you. This is all something that's going on right now. And this is just one step. It's one step in what is really, as long as human beings stay alive, as long as we don't get nuked, as long as we don't murk ourselves, as long as we don't get fucked up by a super volcano or an asteroid or some polar shift or some natural disaster, as long as that doesn't happen, and obviously not me, but people smarter than me who do this kind of shit, they're going to continue to innovate. And as they continue to innovate, we're going to get technology that is more and more powerful, and I think more and more integrated in our lives and in our physical bodies. I think there's going to be a bottleneck where holding a device in your hand, it just doesn't have the same effect or do the same amount of things as they could do if they actually put it in your head. And I think people are going to fucking volunteer for it. I think they're going to volunteer for it like they volunteer for braces, like they get eyeglasses at the optometrist, like they get fake tits. People they're going to get these things put in their bodies, and it's going to be really common. And maybe it won't even have to be in your brain. Maybe that'll be the holdback. People are like, I don't want something in my brain. And they'll go, well, we don't have to do that. We put it in your wrist. It'll communicate with your brain through the nervous system or through electrical impulses, through your tissue itself. And maybe that, along with some sort of a hat that you put on that allows you to interface with the internet, that's going to be a step. But somewhere along the line, if you listen to guys like Ray Kurzweil, Ray believes that you're going to eventually be able to download your consciousness into a computer, which of course gets really fucking weird, because what are you then? Are you still, here's the question. If you download your consciousness into a computer, are you still existing in the physical sense? So if you exist in the physical sense and your consciousness is downloaded into a computer, do the two get to talk to each other? Or are you like, or do you end your life in the physical sense and then begin one in a digital sense? And is it even a life? But if it exists in some sort of a matrix-like state, if they can figure out a way, there's a lot of people today that they're not happy with the life that they've been handed, with the roll of the dice. Maybe they have physical deformities. Maybe they have poor health. There's a lot of people that just got a shitty hand when it comes to life. Like life is not even in the cards of the deals. I don't have to tell you this. You all know this, right? And if someone came along, like what was that guy's name in The Matrix? The guy who wound up selling everybody out, who just said he wanted to be famous or rich or something like that. He's eating a steak in The Matrix and he decides to give in. That kind of existence, if someone comes along and says, look, you don't have to live this life in the physical sense anymore, instead of being dependent upon this monkey body and the tooth, fang, and claw of natural selection and evolution and just the struggle of being a fucking human being. Instead of that, you can exist in this perfect state where you are constantly in love and just filled with joy and having a wonderful life filled with only positive experiences. And you can enjoy this with no negative repercussions. You could just you can become a part of the matrix, a part of the thing, whatever they're going to call it. And from there, you will be the architect of your existence. You'll be able to decide. This idea that, well, the bad days, they make you feel good about the good days. There's no sunshine without rain. You got to have good and evil. Well, that's here. That's in this state. In this physical state, yeah, you have to have good and you have to have evil as we know it right now in this life. We do appreciate our loved ones when something terrible happens, when there's a tragedy happens. We do appreciate the people that are alive when someone we care about dies. Those are all true. But is that the only way that we can appreciate each other? Is that the only way we can enjoy life? Some people would say yes, but I don't think they'd really know. I think that's just, we're basing that on what we have experienced and what we currently, the data we're pulling from being a human being living on Earth. If someone can engineer, and this is not something that might happen in a year or in 100 years, but we might be talking about something that happens in 1,000 years or 2,000 years. Who knows? But around the same time where we think that a technologically based civilization would develop the capability of star travel, of being able to travel not just into another solar system, but perhaps into another galaxy, maybe hundreds of galaxies away. Who knows? But that kind of incredible ability to control your environment, we might not ever get there. And we might not ever get there because we realize that being there physically is not nearly as important as the experience. Like, I've often said this about psychedelics, that people say, oh, you have a psychedelic drug experience. Yeah, you're imagining things that are happening, you're hallucinating. Yeah, well, sort of yes, but no. Like, it might not actually be happening. Like, if you have this experience where you take a psychedelic drug and you are transported to the center of the universe and you are communicating with love in the form of beautifully lit neon geometric patterns that are constantly changing and morphing, and they're filling you up with wisdom and joy and appreciation. Well, people say, well, that's a hallucination. You're taking a drug and you're having a hallucination. Maybe. But either way, the experience is still the same. Like the experience of meeting God because you took mushrooms and having this incredible meeting with the divine force of the universe. If that happens in real life, or if that happens in a psychedelic drug trip, the feeling and the experience are still the same. Like, it might not be a real physical thing in the sense of you might not be able to take it and put it in a pillowcase and throw it on a scale and weigh it, but you can't. Who's to say you could ever do that anyway? Like, it's the exact same experience of meeting God. It might be just as good, is my point. So this idea that, well, I don't want to live in the Matrix, man. I want to live in the real world. Are you sure? What's the benefit of the real world? I mean, is the only reason why we think that the real world contains some sort of benefit for us is because that's the only model that we have to go on, that this is the pattern that we've been following our whole lives, that this idea that, you live and then you die and then you do your best along the way, and sometimes you got to push through the pain, and sometimes you got to fucking get up in the morning when you don't want to get up, and you got to work hard, and when you work hard it pays off and you get a good life, and your discipline equals your freedom, and there's a lot of thoughts that we have about living life that are applicable to this physical, knock on wood life, this real life that you and I are experiencing right now. Everybody listening to this podcast, you had to plug your phone in, you had to listen to it on a computer, you had to touch some things, and something had to happen for you to experience something in a real sense. But that's just because this is what we're used to. We're definitely not used to, if you talk about human beings, if you went back 200 years ago, we're definitely not used to the internet. We're definitely not used to movies. 200 years ago, we didn't even have fucking cars. If you wanted a picture of something, you had to draw it. We're used to all these things now. We're used to photographs. The idea of not being able to take photos on vacation is alien. The idea of having to get in a boat and travel across the country. Like I was talking about how I just got back from Italy. If I lived in the 1800s, I would have had to have been on a boat for months. I would have had to have made it from California all the way to New York, and then would have had to have been in a fucking boat and gone across the ocean the same way my grandparents did when they were little kids. My grandparents came over here from Italy when they were like, I think my grandfather was like 7 years old, I think he said. I would have had to have done all that stuff. It's not going to happen, right? So the idea of no photos is alien. The idea of no movies, no cameras, no TV shows, no radio. There's no radio back then. What the fuck? You couldn't tune into a radio show in 1800. They didn't have them. They didn't exist. All these things that are now a normal, everyday part of our lives were alien just a few hundred years ago, which in terms of human civilization and certainly in terms of the life of human beings, the existence of human beings, it's not even a blink of an eye. This is all new, and we couldn't imagine life without it. I think if time keeps going, or if rather civilization keeps going, over time, if we don't do something incredibly stupid or get fucked up in some sort of a natural catastrophe, we're going to come up with an ability to manipulate our environment, our world, our perceptions, our mind, to create an artificial world, an artificial universe that's impossible for our little fucking chimpanzee brains to imagine. I don't think we have the capacity to connect all the dots. I think with each new invention, it opens up a new complete realm of possibility. Like, you couldn't say to someone in 1800, one day you're going to have Google, because they'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Well, one day you're going to be able to talk to your phone. What the fuck is a phone? Well, one day you're going to be able to talk to your electronic device. What's electronics? What the fuck are you saying? What are you, a wizard? You would be saying something to them that didn't make any sense at all. And that, I think, is how we have to look at the possibility for 200 or 300 years from now. There's going to be new things that get invented along the way. And, in the Old West, it was electricity, metals, new ways of connecting things, and then teletype and Morse code and all these different things got invented before they invented computers, the internet, the world we're dealing with right now. When you look at 200-300 years from now, I think it's entirely possible that these ideas that we have about what the future is going to be like, there's big chunks missing. There's chunks missing from our thought process, and it's because these paradigm-shifting revelations, inventions, and innovations, they haven't occurred yet. And when those things do occur, I think it's going to forever change what the future will be. And as these things occur, whether it's the ability to download consciousness or whether it's the ability to record thoughts in your own mind, record memories, dreams, that's a real possibility. What they're thinking is there's going to be a time where you are going to have a hard drive, like a virtual hard drive, or a physical hard drive, rather. Like someone's going to put an SD card slot in your head, not an SD card slot, but something probably much smaller. It might even be as small as, like Ray Kurzweil has said, as a cell, like a blood cell, like one red blood cell in your body. That's a machine or a computer or a camera or some sort of recording device. This thing may be able to record your thoughts, record how it feels to be you. Like, say if you, fill in the blank. If you're, I don't know who, Ashton Kutcher. Let's pretend you're Ashton Kutcher. If Ashton Kutcher decides to record his thoughts and his life and his day and to take it and upload it to the web, and you could feel what it feels like to be him. Or maybe someone who you would always love to find out how they think. Like maybe Chris Rock, like a great comedian. Like, how does Chris Rock look at the world? Where's he coming up with material? How does this guy think? How does he feel about himself? Like a guy like Louis C.K., who's a very self-deprecating guy. How does he feel about himself? Maybe a guy like John Jones, a great fighter, or Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. How does he feel about himself? How does he think? What does it feel like to be him? What does it feel like to be Mighty Mouse for a day? What does it feel like to go through a workout? You could actually feel it. You could experience it. You could be him for a short period of time. I think that is inevitable. I really do. I think that is as inevitable as recording a picture of your kid blowing out their birthday cake and you watching a video on your iPhone. When you're doing that, when you're videotaping someone's wedding, when you're videotaping a sporting event, when you're holding your camera up at the UFC and you're watching the fights, you're capturing time. You are capturing an image of something. We're so used to it. We don't even understand how fucking insane it is. It is so insane that you could take something that's so small, it's not even as thick as a deck of cards. You take it out of your pocket, and it could film hours of shit. Hours. You can capture hours of images, and then you show it to me, and you could have been on the other side of the world. You could be in New Zealand, and you could be filming some insane mountain view that was in the movie The Hobbit. And it could be you and your friends, and you're backpacking there, and you're laughing and joking, and you make a video, and then you can send it to me through the fucking air. And it could reach my phone on the other side of the planet in seconds. This is nuts. It's nuts. It is completely fucking bananas. But we're really used to it. And it stands to reason to me that this ability is only going to accelerate. They're only going to get better. It's only going to get more in depth. It's only going to get the experience. It's not just going to be visual. Right now it's visual and it's two-dimensional. It's going to be virtual. It's going to turn into a virtual experience. Then it's going to be something that involves much more than just the simple senses of sound and sight. There's going to be feeling. There's going to be neurological responses. There's going to be memory. Then it's going to be emotional. You're going to be able to feel emotions. I think we're going to be able to record thoughts and ideas in the same way we're able to encode and record visual images like photographs or audio like this podcast. Like, I'm sitting here right now. What time is it? 6:34. Friday, July 29th in Atlanta. I'm recording this. You might be listening to this 100 years from now in the future. And you might be saying, whoa. Like, I was listening to this Alan Watts recording the other day that was on universal basic income, which is a constant subject right now. It's been going on around the idea of if you actually just gave people money so that they could live, so they didn't have to worry about making a living, it would open them up to a lot of other possibilities. And this idea that putting people on welfare or the dole, it just makes them lazy, might not necessarily be true, and that it actually might be better if we didn't look at it that way, if we just looked at it the way of once your basic needs are covered, then you're free to express yourself in a much more natural way without desperation. And that desperation doesn't always mean you're going to make the best decisions. And it really would cost us less if we gave people money. Okay. Anyway, point being, this is an Alan Watts discussion where Alan Watts was making a speech about this from the 1960s. So it was more than 50 years old. I think somewhere around 50. Point being, it's entirely possible that this recording that I'm making right now, someday somebody might listen to 50 years from now, 100 years from now, 200 years from now, and they'll laugh. They'll laugh at how wrong I got it, or maybe they'll laugh at how I called it. And we will be living in some sort of a strange world where reality is not something that you measure. You can't like take a ruler to it or, and measure the temperature of it or put it on a scale. It might be something that exists in some sort of a quasi reality setting where it's real. You're experiencing it, but it doesn't exist in a physical form. That's entirely possible. That's our future. It's entirely possible that we, through technology, figure out a way to create not just an alternative dimension, but infinite alternative dimensions, infinite alternative existences. So this idea that we're just going to get to a certain point where we realize that we could build a spaceship the size of the Empire State Building and fucking shoot off to Alpha Centauri and set up shop there and, find some snails and turn them into people. I don't think so. I don't think we're going to be traveling. I don't think that's the future. I think we may, for, the next foreseeable future, we might be sending robots to Mars like we're doing now, and we might send them off to Pluto and to these other planets, and we might get invaluable data about the nature of our solar system. And, there's this planet that they think is outside of Pluto's orbit, past the Kuiper Belt now. They're calling Planet X, and people have talked about this forever. There's some giant-ass planet out there that's, I think it's more than 4 times larger than Earth, and they're pretty sure it exists, like 90-something% sure. Yeah, that's all awesome and fascinating and amazing and beautiful. But I have a feeling that our future doesn't exist in a physical sense the way we think it does. I think we're married to this idea because it's all we've ever known. But I don't necessarily think it's all we're capable of. I think it's entirely possible that one day we might create a whole new world. And this also might be possible with the advent of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is another fucking rabbit hole, because if you want to get your mind blown, listen to, I don't think it was the last one. I think Sam Harris and I have talked about it twice. We talked about it on, I think, the last podcast, and maybe even more in depth the podcast before. It might be both of them. I'd have to go back and remember. I've done more than 800 fucking podcasts now, so even though my memory's pretty decent, I really lose track of which one was what and what was happening when. But the point being, the conversation that I had with him about artificial intelligence was a mind blower, a real mind blower, where it's, in my eyes, it's one of those things, just like we're talking about technological innovation. I think everyone would say, just conservative people that are dreamers, if we start talking about the potential for the future, is there going to be innovation? Yes. Everyone would say yes. Everyone would say yes. If people don't blow themselves up, if we don't get hit by an asteroid, if Yellowstone doesn't explode and wipe out everyone in North America, will we continue to make better electronics? Will we continue to innovate? Will we continue to make new inventions? Everybody would say yes. Everybody. Well, if that's the case, artificial intelligence is almost inevitable. If it's 100 years from now, if it's 200 years from now, whatever it is, one day, eventually, they're going to figure out a way to make something that can think for itself. I mean, Tesla has fucking cars that drive themselves now. You can press auto drive or whatever the button is that you press, and these fucking things will drive. They hit the brakes, they make turns, they follow the navigation system, they have sensors that detect cars, they brake at traffic. I mean, it's fucking nuts. And it's just crept up on us. Nobody saw this coming 10 years ago. Nobody thought in 10 years. Nobody thought in 2006, 10 years from now, we're going to have drivable or driverless cars. Cars that you take your hand off the wheel. There's a hilarious photo of a guy. They snapped pictures of him on the highway. I think it was outside of San Francisco, where he was asleep at the wheel going to work, and his car was driving down the highway. This is all new, right? And what is it going to be like 10 years from now? I don't think we know. I think we could guess. I think we could have beautiful ideas. But I think when every new invention gets created and every new door that gets opened up by new technologies, it creates the potential for a gang of other new, exponentially increasing new technologies. So with artificial intelligence, I think it's entirely possible that we can literally create something that creates universes. Something that creates universes that don't exist in a physical sense. Like you go to the moon, you pick up moon rocks, you come back to Earth. But rather something that exists in another dimension. That we find portals or gateways, or that we find frequencies. I've always thought that it's possible that planets themselves, or that rather reality itself, is like a station on the dial. And I've read that scientists believe that there are at least 11 dimensions. I don't know how they understand this. I don't know how that's when they get to those, those yellow legal notepads where those guys scribble shit down on it. You go, what the fuck is that? But you have to be a theoretical physicist in order to understand what the fuck they're writing. I think those guys have come up with some equation that they all agree upon, where they believe that it is entirely possible that there are 11 dimensions, at least. And this is today, in 2016, right? If you ask scientists in 1955, they'd probably look at you like you have fucking 3 heads. That's a blink of an eye. 1955 compared to 2016, it is a blink of an eye. It seems like 60 plus years for us, but it ain't shit in terms of the world, in terms of human history, and in terms of the evolution of this bizarre talking monkey. It's nothing. And in that time, things have changed in spectacular ways. I think it's entirely possible that through especially the invention and innovation of artificial intelligence and its ability to innovate, its ability to improve upon ideas that human beings have created, because that was one of the most mind-blowing parts about the Sam Harris podcast, was he said that within weeks they will be able to do 10,000 plus years of what it would take us as far as innovation. So the world will change so fast once artificial intelligence once it goes live, once Skynet goes live. The world is going to change so much that it's almost impossible for us to understand. It's impossible for us to guess. I'm standing up here now because I'm kind of freaking myself out, and and my throat is getting a little scratchy. But that's what I think about the Fermi paradox. I think that we're going to outgrow this idea of being somewhere in a physical sense. And I think that if there are aliens, they're going to contact us through our own minds. They're going to contact us through dreams. Aliens might exist in the form of imagination. Imagination itself might be like a kind of energy, almost like a life form. If you look around at the world, obviously imagination is something that, it comes out of the brain and people create things, and it's just, the idea that it's a life form is ridiculous. I get it. Yes, you're right. But the imagination is responsible for every single physical thing that human beings have ever created. This building that I'm in right now came about because of the imagination. The phone that I'm talking on came about because of the imagination. Without the thought of these ideas, without someone saying, what would happen if we took this mud and turned it into a square and then dried it out? Could we make a brick? Ooh. And then if I stack a brick on top of a brick, dude, I'm making a wall. And that all came out of the mind. It came out of an idea. How amazing would it be if we found out that those ideas themselves were alive, that is the way these life forms express themselves, much like the way disease expresses itself inside your body. Like when you catch a cold, right, you have a life form that's growing and feeding off of you. And your body's out of balance. Your immune system is battling this virus, this disease. You could look at it on a microscope. Ooh, look, it's the staph virus, or it's the flu virus. Oh, it's malaria. Ooh, he's got the malaria virus. Well, what is that thing? Well, that thing is a life form. It's some sort of an existing living thing that's trying to multiply and grow, and ultimately it would like to kill your body. It would like to take your body over, and it would love to spread itself to a bunch of other people and take out a bunch of folks. And that's what happens every year with the flu, or every year with malaria. And if you want a harrowing tale of what it's like to have malaria, listen to my friend Justin Wren, who's been on the podcast many times, who was just on the last episode, who goes to the Congo regularly to build wells for the pygmies. an amazing guy, this beautiful person who is doing this incredible thing and helping these people. But this motherfucker's caught malaria 3 times now. It's scary shit. Malaria is some sort of a weird life form, right? What if ideas were life forms? They're just life forms that exist in a non-physical way. And you can make yourself more accessible. You can catch these ideas better. You can catch these life forms. You can catch these things that will ultimately lead to the transformation of the very world around you. They've developed air conditioning. These ideas have made heat. They figured out how to harness fire. They figured out how to take rubber tires and put them around metal wheels, attach it to a frame, and allow you to fall asleep inside of it as it takes you to work. That's all because of imagination. That imagination is something that you can't measure. It's not a physical thing. You can't show it. You don't take like a litmus test. You can't go to the store and, hey, I tested positive for imagination. No, it's just there, and you access it, and you sit around, you daydream, and you lay on your back in the grass, and you come up with an idea. What the fuck is that? We don't know. We don't know. We totally take it for granted. But if you look around at this fucking spectacular world that you see in front of you when you step outside of your house, this bizarre world, that if you lived in a natural world, if you lived in a jungle, or if you lived in a mountain setting and you had never seen human civilization, you were confronted with it for the first time, you would freak the fuck out. You would be like, what kind of bizarre thing is creating these enormous structures with glass and stone and on a scale that is... It is impossible to comprehend a human being creating a skyscraper. One person? No. They had to work together. How many people? Hundreds. Okay. How'd they do it? They have metal. They use machines. What? Machines. Yeah. They have combustion engines. What's that? Well, they're explosions. It's controlled explosions inside of a metal structure that powers these gears. And these gears can lift up things thousands of pounds and carry them through the air. And then they put these glass walls on top of these buildings. Like, what the fuck? This is all because of the imagination. And this idea that the imagination is just some sort of like, oh, he's imagining things, oh, silly, he's a dreamer. It's been kind of put in our head since we were young, because we're taught to be pragmatic, or we're taught to be disciplined, and taught to go out there and get things done and pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and all these like hardcore sort of I don't know what the word I'm looking for, organic ways of looking at productivity in life. But ultimately, this imagination is going to lead us to create something that can change the very nature of what life is. So if that made any sense at all to anybody but me, I'd be fucking shocked. But that's my answer. God damn, that was a long ass fucking answer.